Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 1 of Logicast, the AWS News podcast brought to you by Logicata. I'm Carl Robinson, CEO and co-founder of Logicata, and I'm joined today, as always, by my colleague, lead cloud engineer, John Goodall. How are you doing today, John?
As always, I'm here. That's about as good as I am, I
always.
think.
Yeah,
It's
as always.
It's cold and wet and miserable and January, and it's not long until I turn 34, so I feel old.
Well, we're not really here to talk about the weather, but obviously in our preamble, we did talk a little bit about the weather because today we are joined by our first guest from Ecuador, Gabriel Torres. How are you doing today, Gabriel?
Everything was going well. Thank you for asking me, and thank you for having me here. It's a great pleasure to be part of the great podcast and the first of this year.
Absolutely. Great to have you on. So, as I said, we were talking about the weather in our little preamble there. And whilst it might be cold, wet, and miserable where we are, apparently it's summer in Ecuador. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Lucky you. Lucky you. We've got our heaters on full blast and we're okay.
Doing the...
John,
make it rain in here too.
For anyone who's listening, John's trying to play with his Apple reactions. If you're not watching the video stream, you'll have no clue what he's talking about. But check out the YouTube channel if you want to know what he's actually doing. Anyway, Gabriel, you mentioned you're a AWS community builder in the serverless category. Like John, tell us a bit about what you do in the AWS community.
Yeah, of course. Well, I currently the last year I became last AWS community builder at the serverless category. I have that great opportunity. That's great news for me because in the major of the cases it's a great recognition when you share your content, when you share your mistake and advice. In the major of the cases, I try to share a different post about my experience with my clients or when in my job. But in general, that's kind of things I do. For other ways, the last years, I have the opportunity to be part as the speaker and the community day at Ecuador and the other community day, great community day at Chile.
Cool. What's your talk about? Well, is it the same talk at both events or different talks?
Different talks. The last talk was about observability and how observability has grown in AWS. I think that is pretty nice.
And was it in English or in Spanish?
In Spanish, yeah.
So have you done any talks in English yet, or is this your first English content?
And yeah, my first English content. I would like to start. I don't know, new speakers, new talks in English, but I hope that this year I can do that.
Good to have some goals for 2025. Absolutely, to secure that renewal that we're all keen to remain in the Community Builders Program for another year. When is that, John? I know you're always on the case with these things better than I am.
Start of Feb is when renewals open for us, but it is worth mentioning that anybody listening that isn't currently a community builder and wants to be, applications are open now as of yesterday and run until I think the 20th of January. You only need to put in 2 pieces of content. That's links to stuff that you've done, so long as you can distribute it to yourself. I think it's a minimum of 2. When I applied a couple of years ago, I think I put 6 or 7 things in that I'd done over a span of time to kind of show consistency. But it's only 2 pieces that you need to put in. Well worth going and throwing an application in. And whilst I got in on the first time, it's well known that Carl got in and then got kicked out and then got in again. So it's not guaranteed that you're going to get in the first time round, and most people don't. You kind of have to go at it 2 or 3 times to get in. But it's well worth doing. Throw your hat in the ring, and honestly, if they let me in, they'll let anybody in.
And of course, there's some great benefits to being an AWS community builder, apart from the networking opportunities with a growing community of about 3,000 or 4,000 people around the world. There's some great swag for each year of the program, different swag as you remain in the program. And as regular listeners to the podcast, I know John and I love swag. It's pretty much all we wear. We don't have any grown-up clothes anymore. We just wear swag all the time. So the longer we can stay in these programs and fill our wardrobes, the better. But in addition to the swag, there's great opportunities to network, as I mentioned. There's NDA announcements. Get to find out about new AWS services that are coming out sooner than the general population. There's discount on reInvent tickets. There's private networking space at reInvent. There is what else? What have I missed, John? What are the other great benefits of being an AWS community builder?
AWS credits, so you get some free
Of
sort
course.
of money. Yeah, you get your $500 a year, which is brilliant.
Cloud Academy subscription.
Cloud Academy subscription,
Exam voucher.
exam voucher, one of those per year as well, which I make full use of because I like doing exams. I'm weird. And there's other bits and pieces in there as well. You can obviously put it on your socials. There's a whole kind of asset pack of the logos and the banner and all that jazz, which if you find me on LinkedIn, I've used that in various places. And then, of course, we come back to the swag again, because there's the standard swag and then there's premium swag, which I've been fortunate enough to receive a chunk of lately. I've had a good run, which is all good stuff. But yeah, obviously we don't do it for the swag, but the swag is a nice touch. The best thing is the whole, I think it's 2,900 builders at the moment. That number will kind of move around a little bit over not everybody being renewed or wanting to be renewed, and then new folks coming in the next few months. But it's about 3,000 at the minute. And that is a highly engaged community of people that are well worth kind of engaging with and knowing and learning from and all that jazz.
So there we go. There's our pitch for the AWS Community Builders program. But as regular,
we should have to put the link in the show notes or something as well, won't we?
We'll put the link. We'll put the application link in the show notes. Absolutely. But that is not why we are here. As regular listeners will know, we are here to talk about AWS news. Once a week, I curate a list of AWS news, which I share via my weekly AWS News Roundup newsletter. And then John and I pick a set of articles that we'd like to talk about with our guests. So we've shared the articles with Gabriel, and we do, of course, have a bunch of articles to talk to you about. And the first one is from our friends over at InfoQ. And this is about a couple of announcements that were made before reInvent, I think. The title of the article is Amazon CloudFront introduces support for VPC origins and static IPs. So a couple of separate announcements in the content delivery sphere there. John, what are your thoughts on this one?
Timing. Sorry, folks. That just snuck up on me there. So quick caveat for kind of this and kind of the rest of them as well, because we've had a bit of a break from recording and a bit of a break from the newsletter. This is a little bit older than normal. So you may have come across these, as we talk about them, but that sort of can't be helped. Excuse me for one moment. I appear to have inherited Carl's cough over the internet, which is impressive.
I didn't know contagion over the internet was a thing, but perhaps it is.
Apparently it is. It's a sympathetic cough, but I have no sympathy for you. Okay, so CloudFront introducing support for VPC origins and static IP. So we spoke about the VPC origins already back end of last year when this was kind of new and noteworthy, because I got quite excited by this. I'll go through it again in case anybody missed that episode and just because it gives me something to talk about. Historically, CloudFront needed a public-facing IP address, or not IP address, endpoint, DNS endpoint for you to hit. Right. And what that would mean was you had to have your website exposed on port 80 or port 443, because I don't think CloudFront actually validates the certificate, but had to be available on 80 or 443 publicly. Right. And then you could stick CloudFront in front of it, and then CloudFront would read it, and you could do all the cool stuff with CloudFront that you want to do. However, if you wanted to do stuff like SSL offloading at CloudFront, which, is not a bad idea, because then you've kind of got your certificate at the edge and that's handled. You've got an unprotected website sitting on this kind of weird domain that's a load balancer URL, and that's not amazing. And it still has to be public. So the way you kind of did that previously was you locked it down to the CloudFront prefix list, and that has its own problems, and it's generally just a bit of a mess. So what does this solve for? Well, this means you no longer have to have that. It can just talk directly within the AWS backbone to the load balancer in the VPC. Brilliant. Solved. This is an annoying problem, and it's solved. Great. The other part of this announcement, which is more interesting if you are kind of a large corporate, more than sort of our SMB type customers, and I assume most of our listeners are SMB based as well, but it's more interesting if you're a large corporate. What this now allows you to do is CloudFront will serve traffic publicly. So the prefix list is the IP address range that it connects back to your origin on. The Anycast static IPs are the IPs that it projects out to the internet on. That now works on a pool of IP addresses, and what Anycast basically means it's the same IP address to lots of different servers. It's reverse proxying effectively, but it means that you've got a rotating set of IP addresses that it's serving out to the internet on. Now that's incredibly useful if you are in a position where you need to know the IP addresses that your content is coming out from ahead of time, and you still want to use CloudFront, because historically you couldn't do that. You couldn't sit out CloudFront between you and an external service if your traffic was coming out through CloudFront. So you would have had to just not use it and use something like, an ALB or whatever, which you could then associate elastic IPs to and do it that way. So this solves for that. This means that you can say it's only on this, I think, 21 set of IP addresses, and it'll just be on that forever. And you still don't have to worry about all the servers and all the kit underneath it and all the engineering witchcraft, frankly, to make all of this work. It's just done for you. So that's cool too.
Nice. What are your thoughts on this one, Gabriel? Anything to add?
Yeah, of course. I agree with John. I want to say that, for example, in these both fixtures, both in this case VPC origin and static IPs, I think that VPC origin is so helpful because I currently work in a bank from Ecuador, and in the major of the cases, when we talk about financiers area, is so important the security. The security is one of the pillars when we design architecture, more even when we are designing for financial area. And this is aspect VPC origins suit us very well, because with this kind of feature we don't need to go out of the internet, because we can keep a private connection between each of resources without go out to internet. And for other ways, static IPs, I think that is more focused to the large enterprise, because it's expensive in this case. But well, that is a good as well. That is a good feature, but I think that VPC origin is pretty nice, and suit us as well, because how I work in the financial area is pretty nice in this aspect.
Are you using these things at the bank?
Yeah. No, right now, no. But I would like to start using these kind of things, because, for example, we use CloudFront for our front end. Behind of the CloudFront, we use EC2 or ELB. But with CloudFront VPC origin, we just need a private connections in the future.
Nice.
I am just going to get one sarky comment from the ineffable Corey Quinn, who I met at reInvent. Hi, Corey. Yes, for the low price of $3,000 per month per list, you can still pretend it's 1995. Okay, cool. I mean, he's not wrong. He's not wrong.
Oh yes, I did. I missed that comment in the article. Actually, I've just seen it. Yeah, there we go.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
Well, banks have lots of money, so I'm told, Gabriel. So I'm sure you can convince someone to invest in that. So anyway, on that note, let's move along to our next article for this week. This is a very short article, feature announcement. AWS Backup launches support for search and item level recovery. Again, this is one from December 18th last year, so a little bit behind on bringing this announcement to the podcast. But John, you're waving your hands there. You seem pretty excited about this announcement.
This is big. This is big.
Yeah.
So one of the key disadvantages of AWS Backup has always been, and it's intentional to an extent, was because AWS Backup uses the various services' native way of doing backups. So for RDS, it'll make a snapshot. For EBS, it'll make a snapshot. For EC2, it'll make an AMI. For EFS, it uses how you back that up anyway, right? So it's not doing anything particularly esoteric. It's just wrapping up those into another service. Brilliant. Wonderful. The result of that, however, was historically, if you wanted to recover one file from your EBS, you had to make an entire, potentially server, but at minimum a drive, and then attach that somewhere, grab the file, pull it across. Cool. And then for RDS, again, same sort of thing. You had to create an entirely new database just to get the contents of one table. That's just a bit, okay, fine, the engineering behind it, whatever. Now, with your EBS snapshots and S3 backups. Now, I don't really recommend using AWS Backup for S3 because of cost reasons, because backup is like 4 times the price of just storing it in another bucket. But cool. Sometimes you need it for compliance and having it all in one place and all that jazz. So fine. But for your EBS snapshots and your S3 bucket backups, you can now search for specific items in those backups and restore 5 at a time. So if you only need to grab a couple of them, you can go into the backup file, you can get the file, and you can chuck it, I think, into an S3 bucket. Brilliant. Brilliant. This basically means that and I'm not going to start listing them because there's thousands of them, but your home rolled backup solutions or your third party backup solutions that you start installing on servers and stuff, get rid of them. You just don't need them anymore. And it's just another level of complexity that you could just do away with because you use backup to back the whole damn thing up and you can get to the individual files. Brilliant.
So a few partners may be a little bit worried about this, and I guess technology partners of AWS.
I don't know about partners being worried for it, but I can certainly, because I don't know of any offhand, but I can certainly see third party and old school server backup solutions. I'm thinking like Acronis, Restic, those sorts of people being bothered by this.
I wasn't going to mention any, but you did. So there we go.
There's others are available, but you don't need any of them anymore. Sorry.
There we go. So Gabriel, thoughts on this? Are you excited about it as John is?
Yeah, I agree. It's brilliant because one, I think that these articles also addresses to reduce operations. Reduce the time operations for the teams. In general, I face with the database teams in this case, and in the major of the cases, they need to, in this case, recover entire data sets. But with this kind of feature, you just can recover a specific file or a specific object, and it's pretty nice feature that come to help to the operations teams.
Saves a lot of time, I guess.
I mean, it's especially valuable on. It'd be nice if this came for RDS as well, but obviously I appreciate that's a bit different because backing up databases is kind of a bit esoteric. But it's especially relevant on really large backups. So you've got a couple of terabyte EBS drive, for instance, or your S3 buckets. Petabytes, I think it can go up to. You don't want to have to restore the whole bleeding thing to get to a couple of files. You just want those files. Cool, you can do that now. You do need to create an index on the backup, and you can either do that in the plan, so it's kind of indexing the backups as you're going through, or you can do it on demand on a specific backup after it's been created. So if this is going to be part of your DR strategy and you have a fairly aggressive RTO, recovery time objective for the uninitiated, then you're going to want to do that ahead of time because it's not going to be a particularly quick process to create that index. So you're going to want to do that ahead of time. But it does mean that if it's in an old backup and the backup's a little bit old and you haven't created the index yet, you can go back and retrospectively create that index if you do need that file. But it won't be particularly fast. And of course, it will be based on the size of the backup that you're working with.
Any costs associated with creating the index?
Don't think so. Doesn't say there is.
No.
Cool. Okay, we like it. Let's move on from AWS Backup into storage volumes for RDS. This is an article from the AWS database blog, and the title is Shrink Storage Volumes for Your RDS Databases and Optimize Your Infrastructure Costs. So my understanding is typically storage volumes can only be increased in size and not decreased. This article is describing a way in which you can decrease the size of your storage volumes using RDS blue-green deployments. So, Gabriel, I'll come to you first on this one. What are your thoughts on this? If you have this problem, first of all, where you've got way too much storage that isn't being consumed?
Yeah, that's right. I think that, for example, in the majority of the cases, we have a peak traffic at the beginning of the mode, or middle of the mode, or at the end of the mode. That is the peak traffic. But I think that with this kind of new capability, we can save cost in this aspect because we can reduce with this kind of solutions the cost in general. And for other ways, we currently use RDS for our VPC. Although with the next architecture, we start using serverless or cloud native applications, but we still have ERDS or EC2 or something like that. But it's suit out very well, and I hope to start using in these years.
Any thoughts on the process here? Did you kind of follow through the article and understand? Have you used blue-green deployments with RDS? Or?
Yeah. In this case, I've been using blue and green for others kind of strategy, but in the major of the cases, it's a little manual. But with these kind of things, we can reduce the downtimes. We actually don't. We currently don't have that problems. For example, if we use DynamoDB or something like cloud native, but it's comes very well for new capabilities.
John, thoughts on this? Something, can you see yourself using this, do you think?
No, I think it's too much like hard work, if I'm honest, and I'm allergic to hard work. Right, reducing storage, you're not wrong. As you said at the outset, historically speaking, and to date, once the disk has gone up in size, it doesn't go back down again. That's true for RDS, that's true for EC2, because it's based on EBS. Right. Once it's gone up, it don't go down again. You're up. And the only way on the EC2 side of things, if you wanted to shrink it, and on the RDS side of things, is you're actually creating a new resource with a smaller disk. That's all you're actually doing here. It's just showing you kind of a different way of doing it that doesn't necessarily involve downtime because you're using a blue-green deployment. You could, in theory, do this yourself. You don't have to use the AWS managed blue-green to do this. It's just, here's a way you can. And in truth, it's doing exactly the same thing. If the uninitiated, a blue-green deployment, you have your existing blue environment, you create a new one, your green environment, or you have your existing green, whatever. You have your current one and you create your new one, and you make changes to the new one, and you gradually move traffic from one to the other, and then you get rid of the old one. Easy peasy. Historically, that's referred to code deployments, and it's really handy in that scenario because what you can do is you can move a small percentage of your traffic across to the new environment, make sure it's all kind of working and everything's holding together, gradually shift more. So you don't have this, it's all broken, everything's dead, no one can do anything. You have, that's a bit weird, but only 5% of your customers are impacted. So it's much less kind of onerous. This is an interesting use case for blue-green because they're kind of admitting that people want to be able to shrink volumes after the fact, and there's no good way of doing that. And here's kind of a better way of doing it that doesn't necessarily involve downtime. The other kind of options that they outline at the start for how this has been historically done is backup and restore. Cool. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I've just described. Using the database migration service, that's sort of blue-green anyway, right? Because what you're doing is you're creating a new one and you're just kind of keeping them in sync with each other and then moving the traffic across. And then you native replication, which is basically what DMS uses, but it's not managed. Cool. Wonderful. All of this is great and great, but I wouldn't bother personally, unless you're going to be doing significant storage reductions. Don't bother. It's not worth the headache because the salary cost of your engineers is going to be far and away higher than the money you're going to save on the bill. Promise. And if you really, really care about keeping your storage really tight to your requirements, use Aurora.
Fair enough. This is a solution looking for a problem.
It's one of those, we needed to write a blog about something, I think.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, on that note, let's move along to our next article for this week. This is an article from the AWS Cloud Operations blog, all about troubleshooting AWS Systems Manager patching using Amazon Bedrock. And we've got 3 articles in before we've spoken about AI, but of course, I guess 2025 is going to continue to be the year of AI hype. So here's something else that you can use AI for. Troubleshooting AWS Systems Manager patching with Amazon Bedrock's automated recommendations. So, John, thoughts on this?
I don't trust it. So we do quite a lot of
hallucinations.
Oh yeah, that's for starters. I don't know if 2025 will be the year of the hype because we did see a good chunk of announcements last year in the CEO keynote about various Q developer for this, that, and the other. Like Q developer for hanging out your washing, Q developer for fixing your washing machine, Q developer for your electrics have gone off. Wonderful. But it took a good hour for them to get to them, and Werner's keynote didn't have anything about AI beyond a couple of agentic workflows in it. So it was, wow, okay. It wasn't this massive AI fest that we kind of thought it was going to be. So whether it will continue to be the year of the AI hype cycle or not, I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I certainly don't trust the hallucinations for this. And if I'm honest, I don't get it. Maybe this is because I'm somewhat well versed with this sort of area and this sort of technology, but in my experience, patching failures are one of a very small number of problems. It didn't have permission. It's a bad patch that's interacted badly with something that you've got installed already, and Bedrock is just going to sort of go, I don't know, because it's very specific to you. Or it's things like, CrowdStrike and Microsoft, where they are completely, I want to say a very rude word there, but I'm not going to for YouTube, where they're completely making a hash of it. And it's just come through their bad processes instead. And sorry, there's nothing you can do here. Bedrock is just going to go, meh, and you're going to have to work it out yourself. Sorry. So I don't get this.
I guess to get any value out of it, you'd have to have an awful lot of patch failures to warrant analyzing the logs with AI. So maybe there are some people out there with patching problems at that scale. Do you have patching problems at this scale in the bank, Gabriel?
Yeah, that's right. I agree with Jones, because I think that for me it's not it's useful. For other ways, the architecture overview pretty nice, But if you want to start building AI applications to a specific use case, it's pretty nice, because you put a lot of kind of service, stat functions, event bridge, and so on. But the patching in general is so troubling. For other ways, I see that in the architecture in general, they put this solution in a central account. I think, I've been in the last Reinvent that one of the pillar for them, or one of the things that they are focusing, is in the governance and the observability. And this is good, because if the same solutions they, for example, try to put in a specific account, it would be a lot of trouble, because you need to maintain, you need to put someone that understands the architecture in general. But how I mentioned before, I think that it's a pretty nice architecture in general, but it's not useful, at least for the security teams that in the majority of the cases try to deal with the patching and something like that. I think that there are other kind of platforms or on-premise platforms where you have in a few clicks the same solution. You have a report of the patching and something like that. Yeah.
If you take Bedrock out of this, just, AI, just get rid of it for a minute. This is actually kind of handy, because one of the things that we've historically struggled with at sort of small scale is knowing what's been applied, how's it worked, that kind of thing. And that's kind of a bit tricky with Patch Manager. It doesn't maintain a brilliant list of everything that it's kind of deploying and applying. So this is quite a nice architecture diagram. If you take Bedrock out, to here's how you deal with central patching, which is a new feature, because up until relatively recently, SSM and Patch Manager worked on a per account basis, and now you can do it org wide, and that is on our list of things to build into our landing zone offering, is move this into an org wide patching setup once we eventually get time to look at that product. And there's a nice systems manager document to actually parse the logs, the log extractor, and then in theory you could start doing some clever stuff with it. And it just, again, it feels like a solution looking for a problem. Here's another thing we can use Bedrock for. Cool. Okay. Or you can just spew the log files out and then send them to an engineer that knows what they're looking for. I guess this is kind of handy if you're dealing with a more junior team, potentially, because the recommendations are going to be things like log in, here's the log file, here's what the error message was. Okay, fine. So more junior engineers probably going to get more value out of this. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing from LLMs more generally, is Mid and senior engineers are using them for sort of a force multiplier or a work accelerator, and junior engineers are using them to actually understand things more. So maybe there's use in it there. Maybe.
But back on the subject of hallucinations, is that a risk if junior engineers are using this and it's giving the wrong information?
Yes, potentially, yes. I mean, I've not seen vast amounts of hallucinations out of recent models from people like Claude and Nova and that sort of thing. I've not seen huge amounts of hallucinations. And they're a lot better at not hallucinating, whatever the word for that is, when you're asking it a question about data you've just given it, as opposed to asking it a question about data in its training data. If you say, here's a log file, tell me what's in it, give me the error message, it's quite good at not hallucinating that.
Well, there we go. It'd be interesting to see whether anybody does actually go ahead and build this solution to help them with their patching. On that note, let's move on to our final article of this week. And it's called "And That's a Wrap." So, but that's not a wrap because that's just the title of the article. So we haven't quite wrapped up the episode yet. This is an article
Good job
from
we don't have a proper producer, isn't it?
Indeed, yeah. They might have just cut us off at this point. So this is an article from the AWS news blog about Jeff Barr stepping down as the lead. What was his title? Lead cloud evangelist, I think,
Chief
or head
cloud evangelist.
chief cloud evangelist. There we go. And obviously the head of the AWS blog.
No,
so
just chief evangelist. AWS don't evangelize anything other than cloud.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So 20 years, of course, he had that position. And as the article says, 3,283 posts and 1.57 million words as the lead blogger. So pretty impressive achievement there from Jeff. But obviously, he's continuing on at Amazon, and other people are picking up where he left off. So, Gabriel, are you a regular on the AWS blog?
Yeah, I try to launch or publish 2 or 3 posts per year.
On your own blog?
Yeah.
Where is your blog?
I have a blog in Medium.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll make sure we share that in the show notes for anyone listening if they want to check out Gabriel's blog. So you mentioned that you've been to reInvent. Were you at reInvent in 2024 or 2023?
No. At the end of the moment, I don't have the opportunity to go to the reInvent.
Oh, okay.
But
Sorry.
I hope that this year I can have that opportunity.
Sorry, I thought I must have misheard you. I thought you said you'd been to a previous reInvent. I was just wondering if you'd bumped into Jeff as John and I did.
This is where you drop
reInvent,
it in, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't got my Jeff card handy though. It's hidden in a bag somewhere.
I'd have to walk over there and get mine.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying the photo on this. I am enjoying the photo because obviously through the community things, we saw the original version of this photo, not the photoshopped version that's added people like Matthias in this really kind of sort of.
That's not Matthias's hand there, is it?
No, it's not. No, it is not. It looks like it, but it's not.
Yeah. You have to read the article if you want to know what John and I are waffling on about. So, So who's taking over from him then, John?
I don't think anyone is taking over as such. So it's the article says, as Jeff in his own words says, it's long been backed by an awesome team, both visible and invisible. So, that's what the photo is. It's kind of all of the blogging folks there. So I don't really think there's going to be a specific sort of lead blogger as such. I'm sure there will be in some sort of management structure, as it were. But I suspect it's just going to trundle on same as it has. Whether, because Jeff's articles of late haven't been the kind of deep technical stuff that you'd have seen him doing 10 years ago. They've been much more of the higher level service announcement stuff and here's the really cool thing that we've done. And I think his name went to things like the Prime Day numbers and the Black Friday numbers and those sorts of things. Maybe it'll be somebody we know who gets those names. Maybe they'll round robin them. Maybe it'll be, maybe they'll hire somebody. Don't know. Doesn't say.
Channy Ewan gets a call out in this article. I know he
did the photoshopping.
Posting, so. He does a lot of blogging too, so I'm sure we've spoken
Yes.
about his articles many times on the podcast. But there we go. Jeff hanging up his hat and putting on a different hat. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes next. But on that note, that is a wrap for season 4, episode 1 of Logicast. We have reached the end of our time for this episode. So thank you, John, as always, Goodall, for your insights. And thank you,
I'm going to have to
Gabriel.
put that on my name tag, aren't I?
Yeah, we're going to have to get some swag with as always on it. I think it's become a bit of a catchphrase for the podcast. Thank you very much, Gabriel, as well, for joining us all the way from Ecuador and sharing the fact that you're having lovely, warm, sunny weather while we are sitting here in the cold, wet and windy weather of the UK. There we are. So that is all we have time for season 4, episode 1 of Logicast. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, tell your friends. We are available to download for wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to see the faces that we're pulling when we're talking to you and John's Apple reactions that he seems to love so much, check us out on our YouTube channel where you will find all episodes. I think that's a new one on me, the Rain Cloud, John. I don't think I've seen that one before. So there we go. Check out the Apple reactions on our YouTube channel. We'll be back next week with another episode for you. Thank you very much for listening. See you again next time.